Now they're just beginning to talk about doing away with the incandescent bulb after all these years.
Oh, my.
Can you believe this? All right, we'll get into a lot of this technology. When you started unraveling this, was it based on trying to interpret what you were finding, or was it just right out there in black and white for you to see?
Well, I was trying to write a book on history, George, and it had nothing to do with lost technology or out-of-place artifacts. It was straight traditional history, the way we're taught, and I had interesting discoveries that were related to that. But as I began to go further into it and go off the beaten track a little, some of these anomalies began to crop up. I pushed them aside, thinking, well, they don't fit, I can't explain them, don't know what they're doing there, they shouldn't be. But everywhere I went, certain different anomalies began to pop up, and eventually I began to see that, hey, wait a minute, down in South America this existed. Across there in Asia there was this, and a worldwide pattern began to emerge, so that it was not an isolated discovery, it was part of something that was known in the past pretty well much over the world. And when I realized that there was a pattern to this, that there must have been a great world civilization at one time, I realized that this is something that just had to be told because no one seemed to be telling it.
I know this, again, is all speculation. Michael Cremo thinks that there were advanced civilizations on this planet millions of years ago. Would you share those same feelings?
I would say back as far as we can go, there were great civilizations, but I think our dating can be a problem here. We've got a dating system that doesn't stack up when we start testing it from all angles.
I would agree. I mean, it could be millions of years ago. Who knows? With a planet that's 4.5 billion years old, 5, 10, 20 million years ago is nothing in the scheme of things, isn't it?
Well, we are very small in the whole realm of the universe, aren't we? And we like to think that everything is the best and that we've got the best and our scientists are the brainiest today, but it's not so.
What do you think happened? Do you believe that there was some kind of calamity, that there might have been many Earth calamities that have wiped out these civilizations, and they just keep coming back over and over again? We're in one now, maybe. Well,
that's a very interesting theory, George. And I do know that this is often voiced. My view is that as far as being an archaeologist, I can only go with facts that I can prove, and speculation is a wonderful luxury. I don't grant too much of that to myself. But what I do try is to come up with evidence. If somebody's going to challenge me, I've got to have the evidence for it. And there is evidence that there was a great disaster, and from that disaster, evidently, Egypt arose, Sumeria, the Indus Valley civilization, the old Mayas, and so on. And these people did have many things in common. And the earliest we go back to each of these civilizations, we find them already at their peak, and yet suddenly appearing out of virgin soil, civilizations themselves, and with many points in common that they were sharing, all roughly about the same time. And perhaps I could quote a Russian scientist on this. He said, what was the Mother X civilization that was destroyed and gave birth to these children afterwards?
I love it. From the Earth to the Moon, Jules Verne's work, turned into an old British movie. I love it. Showed current astronauts landing on the moon, only to find old artifacts, a British flag from the 1800s. Do you think we went to the moon in 1969 and later and saw some of those ancient artifacts from civilizations from our planet that may have already been to the moon?
Yes, George, I believe we did. In 1969, I was walking up Hay Street, Perth, in Western Australia, and I distinctly remember the broadcast. Everyone was excited. And as the man who was in the orbiting spacecraft, I can't remember his name, George, you may have a better memory on that tonight.
Michael Collins was above, and yes. Aldrin and Armstrong were landing on the moon.
Very good. Michael Collins was giving a live report back to NASA, and he began to describe something that actually blew my socks off almost, and this was that he saw a large building, what appeared to be a man-made building below, and that this was a tall building. I think he said 7 stories. Now, 11 minutes he described what he was looking at around the moon. That 11 minutes was cut out of every other broadcast, but millions of people would remember the 11 minutes that were cut out. Now, the Chinese, way back about 2000 BC, we've got their records. They've been handed down, and since the exchange of cultures began with Richard Nixon, we've got access to many of their old documents. And they say that they sent astronauts up to the moon. And they built structures up there like pagodas. They called it the Palace of Cold because the moon was so much below zero. And they said the sky was black. They said the surface of the moon was glassy. Now, all these things have been confirmed by our own astronauts going up there. How would they have known unless there was some way of testing that?
Absolutely. You think they have pictures of this? They must.
Yes, I'm sure they do. And why are they cutting it out? I mean, the fact is, when something's done live, of course, they can't stop it, but enough people heard it to remember.
What would the secret be, Jonathan? Why not say, we've had ancient civilizations on this planet. They've been incredible. Maybe fear because we would say, what happened to them? And they'd have to say, well, an asteroid hit us, or a volcano wiped them all out, or maybe they blew themselves up. Who knows what they did? Why don't they simply tell us that there was past advanced civilizations, and we're just starting from where we are?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I often ask that, George. There are people with various theories, and on those theories they've built reputations. And they've built careers, and they've taught something quite different. And I don't think it's easy for them to admit that somebody can come along and say, hey, you're wrong. It's not easy to admit one's wrong. But I mean, you and I want the truth. We just don't care about, I think, what we believe. I've changed my mind many a time, haven't you?
Absolutely. I just want to know what happened.
That's far more honest and it's far more satisfying. But there are theories being taught, and people like to stick to those theories, and then theories are built upon a lack of knowledge, upon speculation, upon what they already think they know, and then when new knowledge comes along, it's not very easily received.
Do you believe that we've been visited by extraterrestrials on this planet?
I believe that there are others not of this planet, but my view is that we've got another dimension here. Rather than from other worlds, we've got another dimension interacting with our own dimension.
That is amazing. I'm going to do some work, as you've pointed out, about this Michael Collins structure on the moon that he apparently saw. 11 minutes clipped out, you say, huh?
That's right. Now, I'm still looking for the transcript. If you ever come up with this, I'll be interested.
Okay, I will work on that. We might have some people who may be able to do some research for us, Jonathan. When we come back, I want you to talk about that picture of that, what appears to be a bullet hole in an old Egyptian skull. You can talk about that. Then we'll go through some of these various incredible events. Your website, of course, is beforeus.com, right?
Yes.
And the book, Dead Man's Secrets, does that include many of the things we're talking about tonight?
Oh, it certainly does, George.
Jonathan, let me tell you, of everything you've investigated, what fascinates you the most?
What fascinates me, it's a bit hard to take a pick here. That's a hard one. I guess what fascinates me is the microtechnology, because we're just reaching the stage where we have nanotechnology, etc., and we're finding that ancient people also were into that.
All right, well, you stick with us. Jonathan Gray is our guest tonight with some incredible stories of events that have happened on this planet for years. We'll be back.